My name is Msgr Don Fischer, and I'm a Catholic priest, retired from the Diocese of Dallas. And in my retirement, what I've focused on primarily is the world of spirituality, and I was a pastor for many years, but now I see myself more as a kind of spiritual teacher. And the reason I'm excited about that is because there seems to be a hunger for spirituality, more so now than I can ever remember. So what I want to start is a series where I am going to spend time in a conversation with other spiritual leaders. And the first one is what you're about to see. And it's with Dr. Robert Sardello, a wonderful, wonderful friend and a wonderful mentor. And what we're doing in this particular piece is we're looking at a mysterious way in which God speaks to human beings. By mysterious, I mean we have, scripture, we have church authority, we have dogma, we have moral teachings, we have all those things, and they're important and they have their role, but there's something about being kind of, I use the word, it may sound strange, mystic. And a mystic is somebody who has direct contact with God and receives whatever he's sending. And I think the area that we haven't looked at enough, or at least I haven't looked at, is how do you read the signs all around us, the signs of the times? And we've never been in a more interesting and fascinating time. It's like the whole world is on a retreat. We're all dealing with a mysterious thing called a pandemic, and the mind goes quickly to, where'd this come from? How do we fix it? How do we get out of it? All that kind of stuff. And that's one way to read the times that you're going through. But there's another way. It's the way of the heart. And what the heart is capable of doing is opening itself with a kind of curiosity, but not with a kind of desire to understand exactly why or how or who, but to read it in a way that says there's something that God is doing in the world that is very, very powerful and filled with wisdom. How do you listen to the things that are going on in the world? How do you listen to the pandemic? Or how do you listen to the tensions that we see or the loss of perfection in so many areas? You do it through the heart, a heartfulness that somehow embraces, pays attention, enters into things, and stays there without expecting an answer or not trying to fix it. So I hope this conversation is helpful to you. It was helpful to me. And it's one of hopefully many. And so thank you so much for listening and for watching. And I hope you enjoy the video. It's in two parts. And so it's like you have a break in the middle, which is, I think, a wise thing. But it's loaded with wisdom, and it's loaded with two men who have a deep intention to awaken you to a new world. Thank you. My name is Father Don Fischer, and I'm a Catholic priest, retired, living in Dallas, Texas, and I'm inviting you into a conversation with someone who I have deep respect for, and I'm going to let him introduce himself by telling you who he is. A little bit more about me is I've been preaching and teaching in the Catholic Church for over 52 years, and have a radio program that I've been preaching to the city for 33 years. So I have this, in my retirement, I have this sense of being called to a much bigger audience than just a parish community. And it's been these last 10 years have been, since I retired, have been very rich and very, very fruitful in terms of my own growth. And some of that growth, a lot of it has been through the influence of this man who's sitting next to me. So, Dr. Robert Sardello, would you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure. Maybe I'll keep it to the aspect that has to do with our friendship.
That's great. Oh, yeah. We've known each other a little bit. How long have we known each other?
47 years. 47 years.
We have. Yeah, we were like 10.
Yeah. So I came to the University of Dallas to teach and start the psychology department in 1972. And then we met, about a year after that?
Yeah, I became chaplain at the University of Dallas, where I had attended as an undergraduate before I entered the seminary in 1973. So that was it.
Well, I don't think probably I've ever told you this, but prior to that, I had basically given up on the church. I mean, I tried, but I couldn't feel anything happening inwardly. And partly I went to the University of Dallas because it is a really important Catholic university.
It is.
I had hoped that maybe that would stir something. It did when you came.
Really?
Yeah, because we met then and started going to mass.
Mm-hmm.
And that before the chapel was there.
Yeah.
Where you and Lyle Novinsky would make the gym into a temple.
Yeah, we did. And then every Sunday Mass was in the auditorium, at Lynch Auditorium. And I would go over there because the night before, Saturday night, was movie night. And so I'd pick up beer cans and pop, whatever it was, and change the movie theater into a church. It really, I did that for almost, before the chapel was built, 12 years. And there was something about it that somehow walking into an ordinary space and transforming it into a place of spirituality felt right, because it wasn't like the church was something separate from the other things that people do that are about learning, and film is such an interesting teacher. And you'd be watching films, and then the next thing I come in and there's another film in a way, and I'm pursuing some kind of understanding of the mystery that's hidden in Scripture. So it was good times.
It was a kind of recognition, that work that you would do there, that the place is already holy. Yeah. And what you would do is place things and beautiful things in such a way that becomes conscious.
Yeah.
It's not like it wasn't there before.
No.
But it was invisible before you were able to see what was in the invisible. That was the sense I had.
Yeah.
Remember, after a short time, after Mass, you and I and sometimes other people, we would...
Right. Eileen Gregory, Dr. Gregory, and you and I, we'd talk about the homily.
Yeah. So I got to see you develop your art.
Yeah.
And over time, I could see that change in the way that you were struggling with a different way of receiving and speaking.
Right.
Yeah.
They were good days, really good days.
Yeah, that was really a very, very significant part of the life of being at the university.
It was, and the other thing that you did for me, and it just opened up so much, was I was, I guess for almost 12 years, I was in therapy with you, and we dealt with my dreams, and I tell you, that was just such a mind-opening experience to know inside of me this unconscious was talking to me all the time. And it was beautiful, and it really was helpful,
Then, so then I left the university and began with some other people, Gail Thomas, Joanne Stroud, Donna Louise Cowan. We began the Dallas Institute of Humanities and Culture.
Right.
And you were engaged in that also. I was there for 10 years, and then I was gone because I started with Cheryl, my wife. We started the School of Spiritual Psychology, which was itinerant. we would sometimes travel 30 weeks a year.
Oh my gosh.
But the interesting part, I'm recognizing it now in being with you, friendship stays permanently.
Yeah.
It's a very amazing thing. It's permanent. I mean, I didn't see you for a really long time. Mm-hmm. And when we are together, it's all there.
Yeah, it is.
It's not like true. I have to find out now who you are.
There's so much to life that is hidden from us, and it's so beautiful to have an unfolding and a growth of consciousness and seeing things. I don't know why we think the world has to become better, because it already is good.
It's already quite complete.
It is. And here we sat out there thinking, if we could just fix it, and there's no, if you think of everything being conscious on some level, and I think it's interesting that the material world would look at us and say, what's wrong with these people? You know, like they're trying to make it better, and it's so beautiful and so powerful, life flowing from everything. It's what I've learned, and what I you know, it's today when I think about the world, and we're all in a world that I think everyone would say, I mean, the kind of phrases I hear, it's crazy, it's insane, it's confusing, it's frightening, and I don't ever remember being in a world that is quite as separated and I don't know how to decide, but I'd love to talk about that with you. Like, what is going on in this world? Why is it seemingly that we're in a crisis? Mm-hmm. And the crisis is so multi-layered. I mean, it's we don't trust in almost any authority anymore. I mean, medicine has lost its authority. It's religion and priesthood and ministry has lost its perfection, and all those, you know, and then here we are wondering, why do I feel like something is deeply, deeply wrong, but don't know what it is?
Yeah.
And what do you think it is? I mean, what?
Because something is deeply, deeply, deeply right.
Okay.
And it's the question of awakening to it in the midst of distraction. Everything is a distraction from separation. Another word for separation is distraction.
Interesting.
Look over there, look over there, look over there, and then as you're doing that, you lose a sense of what is here.
Like the world's got a bad case of ADHD.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's it. We're looking at everything seems like it's, if you pay attention to all these things, you're going to go crazy. I mean, who do I trust? What's in everything? There's something else about everything seems to be showing up as imperfect, and it frightens people that it's not what it's supposed to be, and yet it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's everything is becoming what it is, and we're shocked. You know, or some people are. You know.
Yeah. That part so interesting that, you know, the things that we try to keep hidden are all arising.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's wholeness happening, rather than trying to, you know, eliminate or act as if we're perfect. In fact, maybe that's a good. This sense of the way of the heart is it's like it's the way of imperfection,
Right.
rather than the way of how do we look perfect.
Well, you know, it's interesting. It seems the response people have to finding out the world is not perfect, or that a particular aspect of our culture is failing us in terms of being perfect. The response is anger in some ways, isn't it? I mean, I feel people are afraid and angry. I don't know. Does that seem right to you? Or is that what you see in people? Because have you ever tried to discuss some of these issues with people, and they, I mean, if you're in an argument with them or something, you can see that I think they're afraid of something, you know?
Well, right now we're still within a civilization in which there's only two centers of the human being, the head and the will. Mm-hmm. And the great big hollow place here. And we're discovering this, and will alone is not working anymore. Yeah. And then the confusion is really the healing. Can be. Mm-hmm. Con with fusion. It's like the beginning of the fusion of the living spirit and life. In fact, that's my if I like to characterize you, but not as a character, but as hope it isn't. You're a practical mystic. That's the way I imagine and see you. A practical mystic, meaning mysticism typically means, well, somehow you learn to leave the world to be in the
Right.
divine world.
Right.
And that's fine for some people, but the challenge right now, how to be in the world and within the presence of the divine.
Yeah.
That's practical mysticism that you do.
Well, when I went to the School of Spiritual Psychology, and you and your wife Cheryl were there, and I learned so much, but what you were doing was awakening what I already knew, and it was coming out, and it was the thing that I think was so interesting is you gave us an exercise once where we would put our attention in our heads and then move it down to our heart, and then you, in the will, and then you gave gender, like this was it thinks, and she feels, and he wills, and you told us to do this practice, and I had no idea why I was doing it. I mean, I said, this is really, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, because I don't think about myself as being three elements. I think I have a mind, and people teach me what to do, and I have a will that I do it. And that was what, since I came into the world, I learned that from my Catholic faith. I mean, people are in authority, you obey them, and if you do, you go to heaven. If you don't, you go to hell. It was so clear to me. It was all about surrendering to a power outside of myself that seemed more authentic. I mean, you remember belief. I remember something about belief is accepting something else on the authority of another person, and then. These two work that way, but then what you've opened up, or what I'm opening up, and what I think is so necessary, is this heart is a completely different way of understanding and of being in the world. It had to teach me that, and going into the heart was such an exciting thing when you taught us that in class. I mean, it was just, the class was made up of that work. And wow, I mean, to find a source of strength and wisdom that wasn't coming from here and here changed everything.
The mystery of that, by the way, is, the real mystery has to do with attention. What is attention?
Uh-huh.
So that's why we can say, we don't say pay attention. Paying attention, attention is really our spirit being.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be anywhere. But if I say pay attention, that's using the mystery of attention, harnessing it to our cognitive notion of focusing. Mm-hmm. Pay attention means to focus.
Yeah.
But if I say place your attention here, that your attention is your spirit being. Mm. It's everyone's. Mm-hmm. So you can feel it. I mean, it's like if I say, pay attention to your foot, well then I'm here, my foot's over there. Mm-hmm. But if I place my attention over there, then it's it's like the world opens as a foot awareness world. Mm-hmm. Attention has that kind of, so that was the moment of moving from living by what authority told you to discovering your own authority.
Right.
Because it's always present. Yeah. It's just kind of, here's a way to notice it.
And authority is so connected to truth, and the one who has the truth has all the authority, in a sense, and that knowledge that there's a source of that in me changed something radical, because you taught me that right before, I learned that right before I retired. I remember discussions with you about what do you want to do, Don, you'd say, and I said, I want to be a spiritual teacher. I want to be a spiritual teacher.
That's right.
First time I ever thought about that, and that's where I see myself. Somebody asked me the other night at a party or something, they said, what do you do? And I said, I'm a spiritual teacher. They said, really? what do you teach? And anyway, but the point is that when I realized that there was this space, this presence, this place to go to that was filled with wisdom or truth, and it wanted to speak to me. For the first time, I began to be still and to meditate. Yeah. And I mean, this is, remember they used to say, as a Catholic priest, you should every day spend an hour in front of the Blessed Sacrament and pray, That never happened to me. In fact, I once asked my staff to do it, and I said, let's all do that, take an hour off and go to the chapel anytime during the day. And by the time 2 weeks went by, I said, anybody do it? And we all they put their heads down, and they said, no. And I said, I didn't either. And it was because there was too much to do. If you take that hour, we'll be behind. And when you live in that world of just one activity after another, I did that for almost 45 years straight. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, when I didn't have anything to do, I was completely, first 3 years, I didn't know what to do. And then I began to enter into a thing that I guess you could silence. I just started being still and listened.
There's kind of two ways of seeing what you just said. Yeah. Either there was many years living in distraction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or, and partly that's so, or that was 45 years or whatever the number of years of preparation necessary for the awakening of the heart.
Yeah.
Although it still requires, like the question of truth, that's a good one, which there is a difference between what is the truth and the living, I'll have to use strange language, I'm sorry. The living of truthing. Mm-hmm. It's a process. It's not like I have the truth, somebody has the truth. Mm-hmm. That's up here. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, we can never get to here from here.
No.
So you can't think your way into the heart.
No.
That's why we have to use this capacity of attention, that just by kind of drawing attention to the place where attention centers.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, so this process, the truthing.
Interesting. What could you say about the way the heart works as different from the mind and the will? How does, I don't know if that's the right word. It's a source. We just say, you can go to your head to think things through, or you can just decide you're going to do something, and it's the mind and the will. But the heart is so different than they are.
Yes.
I think if there's something that's out there that could make a major difference in moving people from a place of anger or fear or whatever, it's a source that is different than what do we think and how do you think and what's your opinions on this, or what can you do or how can you do it, and that's where most of my life was mind and will. Mm-hmm. So, but how does the heart function, if that's the way to,
Or to speak of heart awareness. Mm-hmm. Here's the way we typically think of the heart, mm-hmm. It's really strange. Either we think of the heart as a substance without metaphor, meaning it's like this physiological organ that pumps the blood through the body. That's the heart as a substance without an imagination to it. Or we think of the heart as a metaphor without substance, mm-hmm. Meaning, heart. You're really talking about love, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
You're not really talking about the heart. So neither of them. The heart is simultaneously. That's how it's so different. The heart is simultaneously a physical organ and a spiritual presence.
Right.
The only organ in the body that's what it does. The brain doesn't do that. Will doesn't. The metabolism doesn't do that. The heart is physical while being also soul and spirit.
Yeah.
So heart, then it's just, that's the kind of awareness that we're within when we're within the heart. The whole world opens up of, oh my gosh, here's the temple.
Yeah.
The temple is everywhere.
Yeah.
And you can begin to sense that as a particular quality of presence that has to do with wholeness. From within the heart, because it's true. There's not separateness. There's configurations of wholeness. So it's not all fuzzy.
Yeah.
Although,
I remember exercises we did where we would close our eyes and imagine being in the heart, and that was very fascinating because I remember I guess everybody has a good imagination if they can, but my imagination, I can go and imagine a room pretty easily in my head, and I guess everybody can. And when I just using my imagination like that, it wouldn't have worked if I wasn't dealing with something that was real. But when I imagine being there and being, say, with God there, being with truth, and feeling it filling me, because I believe, it's funny, I have a strong feeling about the power of architecture, that you create a space, and in that space you feel different. And in that imaginative heart space, I was feeling different. I mean, it wasn't like understanding, it wasn't mind, it was just this new area of understanding that I had. And then I began to feel being somehow transformed by it. But then the thing that was so exciting is I felt this change coming over me. I began to release myself from a lot of stress or worry about what should I do, what should I say, how should I say it. I remember being with people in my office, and they would come to me. I usually would say, "What can I help you with? What can I do for you?" Instead of "What can I be for you?" And then when I learned a lot of this, I remember coming back and I had a couple in my office, and I was just saying, like, I want whatever is in this to flow from this to your heart, and I know I'm in you and you're in me, and we have this heart space that can speak in a way that's so different than the mind and the will, and then it gives some kind of direction. And I remember a couple came in and they had a son that was staying with them that the father said he needs to be out in the world. He's 35 years old, and she said, "Oh, he's my son. He's got to be here and back and forth." And I was there to make a decision for them of what should they do. And I never, on purpose, ever said anything. I just kept moving this resonance inside me from me to them, and I knew it was working. And at the end, the husband shook my hand and said, "Thank you for helping us make this decision." Or no, "Thank you for giving us this." He said, "Thank you for solving this." And I didn't say anything. And that excited me, that do we really have that inside of us? Do we have this capacity? Yes. I mean, it's so beautiful to know that the God who created me and asked me to be an instrument of drawing people into the truth or oneness, and it has everything to do with staying away from perfection and moving into everything needs to be embraced as it is, and that's the healing that happens. It changes so much, I mean,
a couple things with that.
Yeah.
First, that sense that the heart awareness actually does something in the world.
Yeah.
It's not just that I'm now, I feel more comfortable and happier and less stressful and all that. It does something. It really does something according to different laws than we're used to. Laws of, we're used to cause and effect.
Right.
So they came to you, and you're going to be, you're going to say, do this, and that's the cause, and then the effect will be, thank you, and now I know what to do.
Yeah.
The heart doesn't, this was full of awareness with them, and it does something that you're very, very aware of, but not so easy to say, this solved the problem.
Yeah.
It changed the problem into a mystery to be lived.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to mention about all of it, the word practice came up, that we did a lot of practices. But practices are really different than doing something over and over and over until you master it. Mm-hmm. That's the typical meaning of practice. That's not the practices that we do with the heart are just ways of saying, well, look at this, you haven't noticed that maybe before. Look over here, and you'll notice something that you haven't noticed. Mm-hmm. And it takes time for that to kind of really get comfortable, and the discovery of what it's like is endless. Mm-hmm. It's not like, now I've mastered it, thank you, I have a new tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Mm. Well, today, how would you describe what's going on in the world today in terms of what is it we should be heartful about? I mean, in terms of where is I'm trying to think of I know the effects that people are I know how they're feeling. They feel like they're confused. They're not sure where to go. They're afraid. But what's missing, or what is it they? I mean, technology is taken over in so many ways, and I'm just interested in your thoughts about that. If you were diagnosing an illness of the world, if that's the way to say it, that's a little bit from the mind. But what's causing the struggle, and how do you see it resolving? If that's a lot of. I mean, I'm not asking for the solution.
Right. But how to work, in particularly with the heart. Maybe by asking, what's trying to arise?
Okay.
That is so unknown that it kind of, strengthens the clinging to these old forms that aren't working anymore.
Right.
How to begin to, maybe in relation to the heart, I think it's an arising of the possibility in the world of being within everything, even the most practical things, receptively, rather than I know or I need to know.
Or I need to control.
Or I need to control. And that opens a lot of questions about how does receptivity do anything?
Right,
So
yeah.
We think of it as, I've got to do something to make it
better.
Rather than receptivity is way more powerful. It's way more powerful than, because it works wholly rather than point by point. Mm-hmm. If I'm in the realm of willpower and mind power, it's all kind of digital. It's one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. The receptivity of the heart is we're within the wholeness of a certain kind of unity of our own being and the world and those around us and the cosmos, and particularly nature. We're all part of that.
Yeah. And
then just noticing it. The noticing enacts something happening. Mm-hmm. The noticing, a little story maybe.
Sure.
The other night, a very dear friend called me from Dallas, and I was still an hour and a half away, and she said, it was like 9 o'clock at night, and she's elderly and very frail and dying. But she had gone out to the grocery store late at night, filled the car with groceries, got it home, couldn't get the groceries in the house. So she called and said, what am I going to do? I can't put the trunk lid down, I can't carry anything. And so I started worrying about it. I mean, really, what am I going to do? I'm an hour and a half away. Well, can you call him? Can you call him?
Yeah.
And then I caught that, kind of noticed that, and just let it be within the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Just let that, and it, and I could feel that. Then 2 minutes later, she calls and said, the lady next door just gave up. Now we don't take that as, well, that's just coincidence. That's the way wholeness works.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
But we can't predict the way it's going to work with the heart. The heart is not predictive, but something will happen in the world. Our work is just to be able to notice it.
Yeah.
Like noticing this in that way, and I could feel it. That if I tried to figure out what to do, it would be,
Yeah. Well, I love that idea of receptivity and instead of power and control. And it's clear to me that when I talk with people about their faith life and they talk about, it's interesting, somebody else say, well, I really like God, but I don't like Jesus. And I said, pardon me? And I said, no, they didn't. And I said, well, what don't you like about Jesus? Well, Jesus is always telling you you're wrong. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Not the way I saw it. And then they say, well, I don't like God because he's so powerful and he's so demanding and punishes everybody. And it's classic that they have these images, and it's one. I mean, it's God the Father and God the Son and God the Spirit. I mean, it's an interesting way to have an understanding of one person. It's one person. I mean, it's one God. We say one God, three persons. But the idea that there's two forms of this powerful thing called God is missing so much. I mean, it's definitely mind stuff, but I mean, but there's an evolution between a master God in the Old Testament and then this God that comes in the New Testament. And the God that comes in the New Testament is a scandal and confusing, because all he said is, I don't want to be a master. I want to be, in fact, Paul said this in his reading. He said, Jesus came in the form of a slave or a servant. So we have an image of a powerful God, mind and will, and then all of a sudden there's a servant who saves the world by accepting everything.
Yeah.
Accepting everything. I mean, his destiny, the imperfection. Anyway, but how do you see that as related to the shift between these two and this? Is the master to the servant?
So that Jesus, the Christ, is the prototype for the future human being.
Right.
Meaning it's not saying, I'll show you what you need to do. He's living what is a possibility for everyone to live. Mm-hmm. So it's like the prototype.
Right.
Prototypal imagination is different than archetypal. It's not like saying archetype means reaching back, look back to the past to know how to be in the present. Mm-hmm. Christ looks, he knows he lives in the realm of becoming, not the realm of what is pushing me from behind to act the way I'm acting, which we tend to do. I learned this from my parents and from my school and from my country and from that's being pushed from behind. that means we're always has-beens rather than becoming.
Yeah.
So, so this is a moment where that capacity of belonging to becoming can become much more apparent this time. But it's also, the moment where we can enter into a much more difficult forms of control.
Yeah.
It's more like a choice moment. A moment of choice is really a significant time we're in because of those two choices, and they can't be made by the head.
Yeah. It's that image of, I love what you were saying earlier about the heart as a place of, I think I got this right, is acceptance, or a giving in to the way everything is, and that the way it is the way it is, and that's what is. I mean, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But we the mind tends to make reality into something that we are in control of, or we can make it happen, and that's a major shift. I mean, from a world of, all you have to do is be with someone and listen to them talk about how the world is changing, and they talk about change is dangerous and bad, and yet, in fact, I was with somebody the other day, and they were saying, well, people have never changed; they're always the same. And I thought to myself, well, if you don't understand that there's an evolution of consciousness that we're a part of, that's been going on from the beginning of creation, and the key is not to control it, but to surrender to it, right? I mean, to surrender to the whole process. And yet people think, well, that's giving in. That's saying everything's okay. And it is okay. But I mean, what is it about the ego that really demands that we fix everybody or fix things? And I think of that image of the Dark Mother in Jung about, and I think of religion as being this nurturing figure, but at the same time it can be that controlling, I gave you life, you owe this back to me, or whatever that kind of thing is, the dark side of love that is really control but masquerades as I care for you, because it's anyway.
It really helps me see more clearly, thank you very much. That in our usual way of a consciousness, head and will, we're hiding from God.
Yeah.
We're hiding God from God.
Yeah.
Hiding,
Yeah.
meaning one of the interesting things about heart awareness, that along with that, I continually notice how imperfect I am, but it doesn't carry with it, I've got to correct that and get better. It carries this sense of, oh my gosh, everything that we are is an offering to God. Everything. So if I keep all that other stuff out, it's like saying, I don't want you to know who I am. Yeah. And the mind wants to select, what's the best and hide the rest.
Is the world, you think, today just being faced with this reality of the imperfection and the responsibility to surrender to it in a way that is not controlling, but at the same time you surrender to it because in the act of surrender there's life in that action that it's hard for me to put into words that the difference between fixing something and accepting it, and the accepting of it makes things better. I mean, it's kind of a contradiction of terms. Better is you improve it by telling it what it should be doing that it's not doing. But there's an acceptance of it that has this mysterious, mystical power of entering into a world of peace. It's all right. It's like, no, it's okay. But if you just live with it, stay with it, trust it. We don't trust it when it's falling apart.
Yeah.
You know, and that seems to be what's going on in the world today. I mean, people feel isolated, separated. This pandemic is so fascinating what it's doing to us. It's almost like, is the state of human nature somehow being reflected in the pandemic? Is it?
Yes.
In what sense do you think?
Well, again, that the ways of living that have been this civilization's way is now at an end.
Yeah.
It's the end, and but you know, when something's at an end, you don't. What do you do? I mean, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So you tend to perpetuate in a even more rigid way the very thing that's at an end,
Mm-hmm.
rather than it's a moment when just a little shift of attention, and isn't it so that if I think about what's happening, I'll go into fear.
Yeah.
And it's impossible not to, because it's composed of fear. If I just allow attention to be within the heart, doesn't make everything all right, but it makes everything feel like it is some kind of evolving happening. And then, because this is kind of the hard part, it's got to be allowed to evolve, and our noticing it as it is evolving. What is this? I don't know what it's going to be. If I say I know what it's going to be, I've shifted to the head, and it's going to be false. So it's how to stay with what's happening, even the things that we despise, and not despise them. How to let. Everything is coming out. Everything.
Yeah, everything.
Everything. We're in this amazing post-truth world, which is both confusing but revealing.
The pandemic could be a way of I'm thinking, is it a sign that there is in the old way a way that continues to keep us separate and distanced and not connecting, and because we're trying to fix everyone and fix everything, and there's something about, I know in my work, that when somebody taught me, or I learned that there's a way that you can work with a thing called the non-judgmental observer, or something where you're watching everything without judgment. And it's almost like the mind will not let go of the fact that we think we should fix the world, when the world is already being fixed by a power greater than us, and we refuse to go with it. You know, we refuse to give into it, you know, or be connected to the process. I don't know how people take on what's going on in the world without believing that it all is moving towards something good. You know, when a breakdown is a breakthrough or a break into something new. Mm-hmm. So if you're afraid of that, then it seems there's something separating us. That's what I keep thinking, because when I think of the pandemic, I think of the mask, or further away from you. So I've never thought of living in a world where we're supposed to be distanced and masked.
Yeah.
Why? That is just, and the whole world is experiencing it today. So there's got to be something in that in way of imagining that should give us hope instead of the opposite. All we think about is, how quick can we get a vaccine and get over this and forget about it and go back to the way it was? And I don't think that's going to happen.
That will not happen.
Yeah.
We're coming to be aware that we are living in a prison.
All right.
And that everything that's happening exaggerates that, so we can see it. You separate from each other,
right.
And you're not together. We're in a prison. The problem is, if you try to get out of prison using the means that got you in prison,
right,
you just amplify more and more. So, but being in prison, so look at the great prisoners like Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the Gulag, and the way he in Russia, and how he speaks of that, how he speaks of that's where he found freedom. He found freedom because he was in prison, because he was able to. That's just another way of saying that he discovered the truth of the inner life.
Mm-hmm.
So everything else was false in a way. If you live in prison and you concentrate on how am I going to get out, which is, by the way we live in the world.
Right.
If I had a better job, I'd be free. If I had a better house, I'd be free. That's trying to get out of the prison using the means that is making the prison.
Right.
So he didn't do that. He went inward and discovered the heart. He'll even say that in the midst of this icy place, it is warm.
Yeah.
So there's no outer way out.
Mm-hmm.
There's no outer way out of this, and that's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It's the only way that the inner can be discovered. But it may take us several thousand years.
Okay.
We're kind of slow.
Yeah.
We're reaching that 15-minute point.
All right. I want to. The other thing I guess it's my intention of this conversation. I have in my heart a feeling that there's a solution, there's a way to deal with this entire world's position, but it seems there's a crucial turning point that we haven't maybe done yet. Is it, like it has, what is that term? I never can remember it, but the critical mass, when it shifts, and there are so many people that I think are aware of what we're talking about, the image of the power of surrender, the power of acceptance, the message of forgiveness. I mean, when you think about Jesus' teaching, it's primarily about forgiveness, which is acceptance of everything as it is, with no anger, no resentment. You don't call it good, bad, or bad good. It's just, but it is what it is. The fact that he surrendered to something that was completely opposite of what the ego and will would want to do in terms of a ministry says everything to me about where is the decision or the point at which it shifts.
Yeah.
And it has to be something to do with what we're talking about. I know that.
That's beautiful. The word forgiveness is forgiving.
Yeah.
Forgiving.
Right.
Not I'm going to forget that you hurt me. It's for whatever hurts us is forgiving to the
For life, forgiving life, forgiving, yeah. It's amazing.
So that's really nice, Don, to
Yeah.
imagine this moment in the world as the possibility of the arising of forgiveness.
Right.
Isn't that astounding? That's
It is.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I
It's
think it
astounding.
is, and what I love about my heartfulness that I have, that makes total sense to me now. And I remember even giving a lecture years ago, and somebody said, "Well, I don't understand this forgiveness part. It doesn't make any sense. If somebody does this horrible thing to me or to my daughter, you're going to ask me to say it doesn't matter?" And I didn't have an answer then.
Well, it does matter. Always will matter.
Yeah, it does. But it's just it's that there's something in the act of acceptance, meaning in the place of anger, resentment, stress, you have this surrender to something that is life-giving, and it's in the struggle, it's in the pain of it all. I don't think. Well, maybe a lot of people think, well, why can't we go back to, well, you and I are both old enough to say, what was it like in the 40s or 50s? But I remember those days. And everything was perfect. I mean, priests were perfect, police officers were perfect. Everybody was, we believed the world was absolutely without sin. That's what it sounded, you know. And then when it started, wait, no, that's not the way the world is, then some people would say, well, you know, it was great back then, now it's evil. As if there wasn't some same thing going on there, except it was all unconscious. And now it's like we're so aware of, well, the heart has helped me be aware of something going on that is moving in a positive direction that demands a surrender to everything we think we should change or fix. Does that make sense?
No, it's huge, particularly in relation to this country, America, and what we called everything was wonderful just meant it was going our way.
Yeah,
that's all.
True.
But when you see though look, the country was founded by a group of prisoners. Prisoners who came and encountered the freedom that is this land and immediately imprisoned them, made them prisoners.
Yeah.
So it's prisoners making a land of prisoners. So and then along with that came the false means of getting out of this prison that they entered. Meaning that then, what did they discover as the way is gold and greed. Remember, that's just in our country.
Yeah.
And still remains as, well, the way out is what I can get that's next.
Yeah.
So we're all also, as you can see, the country itself is in an absolute moment of utter crisis. That is, utter opportunity.
Right, yeah. It's great. I mean, I don't know how you do this. Well, I don't know how you live consciously in the world without a conviction that there's something so much more powerful than we can imagine that is in charge. I mean, I don't even like that word because it doesn't feel like God is really in charge like I think my ego's in charge. But there's something that we're moving toward that is so much more life-giving or life. I don't know. I mean, we're made for more than where we are right now. I know that. That's all I can say, if that makes sense. I mean, just that description you had. So, but I think there are many people, and myself included, if I go back to where I've been, it seemed that was a good way to do it. I mean, get as much as you can out of whatever you're doing, and that'll make you happy, and then you die, you know, and hopefully you don't die feeling that you missed life, you know, which is what we do when we don't surrender and take on the form of a slave or a servant.
That's great too, because you're realizing this really astounding thing, which is also human beings evolve. Yeah. But we act as, well, we're always the same. Everybody's the same. You know, you go through this and you suffer this and you try to get, you know, what you can and preserve your family and do all that. And then, but you remain basically the same. Yeah. But that's not true. This is the moment of evolution into heart intelligence. Yeah. That means being different human beings than we were. Different human. It's not like, well, I'll add this on.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I've loved this conversation. This has been great, and I hope we can do it again. And I don't know. You mentioned friendship earlier, and it makes me think about what is friendship and how does it work. But I mean, I don't want to say that you've taught me all these things, you know, exactly. But in our friendship, somehow there's been a flow of this without us understanding, you know, and I think that has something also to do with when you stop working on these two, you're in this, but this connection is not anything to do with geography or time. Right. It's just there. Right. And insights that you have, I receive without you ever telling me them, or vice versa. You know, I mean, that's what's exciting about the world as it really is, because communication we've limited to speaking or thinking or doing, and there's another world, you know, and it's God, it's so exciting to feel it, you know, happening, because it doesn't need our control. You know, it doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be embraced and accepted. Yeah.
So, thank you. Maybe it's a chance to bring out the word.
Okay.
But living in the heart is living in love.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean, you know, I love. It's living in love.
Love, yeah.
That's the difference. It's quite a different place than living in mentality.
Yeah.
Although but the heart thinks too, but it doesn't. But it's living in. So that's what you were just. What I felt really strongly in friendship. Friendship is a particular kind of love, and
Yeah.
so thank you for developing the School of Spiritual Psychology, Don. I mean it.
Yeah,
It's true. I
Awesome.
mean, we're you know, in those 20 years that probably we didn't see each other, you did good work.
So did you. So did you. Well, thank you for today. This has been wonderful,
It
and
was fun. Yeah.
I'm very, very pleased that we've had this conversation,
Me
and
too.
more pleased that we have this relationship.
Yeah.
And it's a heartful relationship. Thank God.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
do more.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.